Doctor Who, The Holy Terror.
That's it. That's the idea. Find somewhere to hide.
I remember the pleasure you took as a child, pulling the wings off flies. But where has all that evil gone, Childrick?
There's no escape from me. I intend to usurp the throne from my brother, and I shall be emperor and god instead. Okay, guys, now, before you do anything hasty or violent...
It's a bird!
Yeah.
It talks!
It's a miracle!
Fascinating. So, what you've got here is your good old-fashioned polytheistic religion, but with a monotheistic structure. You can worship lots of gods, but only one at a time.
I decided long ago that I would become god.
And what is down there?
Your new messiah.
Tell me, what will you do with your great powers?
Kill.
And what else?
Destroy.
And what else?
There is nothing else. After I have destroyed everyone in the castle, I will destroy the castle, and I shall be alone with my father.
The legacy of my evil shall be eternal. Hey, do you mind? What's a guy got to do to get some privacy around here?
We're in trouble. The TARDIS is out of control.
The TARDIS is always out of control. Is it worth interrupting my bath time? It's embarrassing. I'm all naked here.
Frobisher, you're the shape of a penguin. You're always naked.
Well, that's what you think. I usually morph myself a black and white pair of pants as well.
My name is Christian Basel. Years ago, I had an idea. I got myself a TARDIS. Took it to new places, met a lot of new people, took some great pictures, and talked Doctor Who. From Krypton Radio and the creators of the Hanging With web show, this is the legend of the Traveling Tardis. Join me on my latest adventures and become part of the legend. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to another episode of the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS radio show. I'm going to be your host on this adventure. My name, again, is Christian Basel. And we got something big for you. Big. I'm talking big finish. Now I'm thinking to myself of that commercial. I don't remember if anybody remember the smart car commercial. Big. But never mind. We'll just digress. Anyway. So before we get things, before we get things started there. Oh, so remember the commercial. That's good. I'm not the only one that was falling into that. So
I plead the fifth.
Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started since we've already got Melanie talking. I've got my co-host, Melanie Dean, artiste.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to this big episode.
A big finish episode there. A returning guest, Mackenzie Flohr of The Right of Wands and other other good books. Mackenzie, how you doing?
Hello. Good. Getting ready to go to South Dakota to pick up a gold medal winner.
Oh my! Right.
Get it, girl.
And I have an announcement. Matt Smith also won an award for the same thing, though he doesn't probably know it yet, but he won also in the other category, and I'll be picking that up for him.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. I like that. When you go up there, can I come with you? I fit conveniently in some suitcases, trust me, in a Foot Locker in the good day. And always returning one of our favorite doctors, Dr. Freedom himself, Brian Burress. You know him on YouTube. I don't think I've ever asked you the question, Brian. Where did that title come from, Dr. Freedom?
Oh, that is a long story. Okay. It's a combination of factors, but it primarily came from Dr. Johnny Fever, WKRP.
Oh!
And one night, what happened was I wanted something that sounded like catchy, kind of like a little bit, like a superhero. But I was like, I don't want to go like Colonel, General, or something like that. And then all of a sudden, one day, Captain Freedom pops up on the screen because the Running Man was on. And then I was always a big fan of WKRP, so I just combined the two to make Dr. Freedom.
Freedom!
That is awesome.
And we want to welcome back our guests from our previous episode. We had a wonderful time talking the Valyard with Brian and a team of other big geeks from Classic Who. We are welcoming back Mr. Charles Martin, and you must check out his podcast, The Space Javelin, for all you nerds out there. You're going to love it. How you doing, Charles?
Good. Yeah, the name Space Javelin comes from my co-host, Mike. When he gets angry at
everyone, because he does pretty much. He always wants to rain death on them from orbit, and so we were like, "Oh, a space station that could fire javelins at people." Okay, got it. Okay.
Now I have something in mind, but anyway, it's not pretty. What? Never mind. Anyway, folks,
he's just angry all the time. He's the Bruce Banner of our show.
Don't make him angry. In any case, there, folks, we always start off with the Who's New News, Who New, and I can't even say it.
The Who New News.
The Who New News.
Who knew?
Tina, hit the music.
Well, to start out in the Who Knew News, we have the lives of Captain Jack.
Yes.
So, Big Finish Productions, in association with BBC, has announced that John Barrowman will be reprising his role as the dashing time agent Captain Jack in this second volume of audio adventures. And he is going to take on fake news, trench warfare, and the Sixth Doctor's dress sense in 3 different stories. So Captain Jack and the Sixth Doctor will swap coats in the lives of Captain Jack. It will be available for release in June of 2019. James Goss, who helped to produce this, said that they had such a great time doing the first one that they were very happy that John managed to find the time to come back. And hearing him face off against Colin Baker's Doctor is a joy that everybody will absolutely love.
Can't wait.
This sounds exciting. I mean, when they have the Diary of River Song, and she's going back through the time stream, the Doctor's time stream, the Master's time stream, and hearing all the voices overlap each other. I meant the Eric Roberts Master talking to River Song. I love it. So to hear Six and John have a verbal spat, that's going to be interesting. I really think this was actually illustrated that one day John was probably walking by a cosplayer who was dressed as Six. He tried on the coat and he goes, "I need this to be a Big Finish storyline somewhere along the way." I think that's how that's just my take on it, but I could be wrong. Anybody else? What do you guys think of this little ditty? Six.
He made that coat look good.
It does.
Yeah, he did.
I just like the idea of Jack kind of putting on the coat and also trying to emulate the Sixth Doctor in his very frank and sassy kind of way of just pointing things out straight away. So I think that's going to be a fun little spin to listen to.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
It was fun enough listening to Eccleston and David Tennant try to keep him in check. Now imagine Colin Baker doing it. That's good.
Okay, well, I also have some fun news because Doctor Who, obviously, is a fan favorite for children as well. And Candy Jar Books actually announced their latest in the Lucy Wilson Mysteries novel series. It's the Bandrel Invasion. So Billy Bandrel is the TV sensation sweeping the nation. So according to the BBC for their Doctor Who news, so the Bandrels, of course, made their appearance in the Sixth Doctor, since we were just talking about that in Time Lash. And since they were quite puppet-like, it was a lot of fun and inspiration for this Lucy Wilson story for children. So it ought to be the illustrations are beautiful if you get a chance to take a look. And that is available right now. It's for pre-order only at the Candy Jar. So that will be fun for all the kids to look forward to. A little bit of
That's an interesting new use of the Bandrels I hadn't thought of. Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself, Charles, how many times has Doctor Who explained the Loch Ness Monster in some form or fashion?
Right.
There's Time Lash. I'm like,
and the 3 Atlantises.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm kind of in the minority. I kind of do have an affection for Time Lash. I just didn't like the way that they treated H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
He was like this snotty kid, and I was like, the man who wrote The Time Machine is this little snooty kid.
Well, but he hadn't yet. See.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I thought he would be a little bit smarter than that.
I would have liked to have seen them like doubled the budget, spend another $5. You know, it would have been good.
Yeah.
And was it just me, or were the Morlocks' appearance, shall we say, rather strange? I don't know. I'm trying to find a clean way to describe it. Especially that one scene with Perry. Oh man. But that's just me.
Not her shining moment. No.
Yes. Well, speaking of not so shining moments, right? So BBC sent an email out to sci-fi fans on their email list, and they asked them to send in any intriguing untold stories, stories that were ripe for reimagining, and also asked fans to state which historical periods they would like the Doctor to visit or revisit, so they could get some ideas for 2020. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's extremely interesting because usually writing-wise, you're not going to put you don't want to take you don't really want to take the temperature that directly up with your fan base. So that's kind of very eyebrow-raising because usually you can just do that by looking at social media and just seeing what they're saying without actually being out there and pointing out, "Hey, we want your opinion." That just odd.
Yeah,
it's intriguing.
I think that was just an exercise in fan engagement. I don't think these will actually turn into any scripts because, of course, the number 1 and 2 suggestions are going to go meet Jesus or meet Hitler.
He already met Hitler. He already did.
Hey, they already met Hitler. They put him in a cupboard. Remember?
Yeah.
I wonder how many would also say meet another, a previous Doctor. How many submissions they get that way too?
Yeah, right.
I actually had a fanfic idea when I started. This is an old script that I kind of came up with in my head. So I guess we can. I guess now it's on audio. It's kind of phrased in. It's not locked in. So it's my story. But
canon now.
It's canon now. But the Doctor and his current companion, or her current companion, ends up at the White House, and it's an emergency that was hit by the button by the president. The president is disappearing in front of the Doctor. And doesn't understand why, and everybody notices that the Declaration of Independence is also disappearing, and the building starts to disappear, and something is going wrong at the exact moment of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So the Doctor goes back in time and has to deal with the realistic, the story behind this is there's an ideology between how we perceive the Founding Fathers and what they really were. They were men. They weren't, they were
the cast of Hamilton.
Yeah, they were the cast of
Hamilton.
There we go. Ben Franklin was a bit of a womanizer, but he also, he was one of our founding fathers. I guess he discovered electricity, bifocals, stuff that. Where do you draw the line between the reality and I think what was it, Liberty Valance? Trying to the
Liberty Valance effect.
Right. When you go with the fact or go with the story, go with the story. So the Doctor finds out who these people really were back then. And so you guys are really going to write up a document that's going to, start a whole new country. And lo and behold, one of the people that just seems to be added on to the list of people in the Congress is the monk trying to prevent it. So
I thought it was going to be Michael J. Fox going back in time and teaching them rock and roll, which causes him not to be born and undoes everything that's happened since.
Well, lo and behold, we are going to go forward in time because we do have to come up against a commercial break. But real quick before we go, I just want everybody to know that there is a rumor floating around that there might be a Christmas special for this year in anticipation of the 2020 season. And with that,
yes, please.
And with that, we're going to go to commercial. Colliding Skies by author Debbie Zakin. For as long as Sky Riley can remember, she has been gazing up at the stars. With high school graduation upon her, her telescope in one hand, and her college acceptance letter in the other, her life is meticulously mapped out like a star chart. That is, until the Celians arrive and she meets Ethan, an alien whose electrifying touch could stop the very heart she has given him. Ethan and Sky collide like asteroids, causing a gravitational shift in Sky's trajectory, and hurling the star-crossed lovers into an interplanetary maelstrom. Get Colliding Skies by author Debbie Zakin today at Amazon.com or wherever online books are sold.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Hello there, my name is John Davey, and I have been in 43 episodes of Doctor Who, playing many of the monsters, such as Cybermen, Daleks, and the Ood, and you are listening to The Legend of the Traveling Tardis radio show.
Authors, filmmakers, producers, anybody that has anything to do with creating independent stuff, comic book authors, musicians. Make sure you take advantage of the 2019 Indie Originals Live Talent Competition, going on now at www.indieoriginalslive.com. This is your exclusive opportunity to become an official award-winning independent creator to use that in your marketing. Enter today at www.indieoriginalslive.com.
Are you looking for a used car?
Check out the Public Auto Auction app from CarAuctionNetworks.com.
You can download the app on your phone or tablet and use it for free, and there's no registration required.
You can see what's for sale at car auctions, such as
bank repos,
dealer trade-in,
surplus government vehicles,
or impounds.
There are plenty of cheap used cars and trucks listed in the app.
You can save a lot of money with Public Auto Auction app.
You can also see and bid at car auctions online.
Get the Public Auto Auction app for iOS at the Apple Store.
Or on Google Play.
Or simply go to CarAuctionNetwork.com.
That's CarAuctionNetwork.com.
Now on Amazon.com, iCoin from author Jeremy Mosby. It's an alternate reality, and the leader of the planet iCoin is none other than Benjamin Franklin. When corrupt officials threaten not only iCoin but the Earth as well, an unlikely chosen one must face dark foes to save the Earth and iCoin alike. Author Jeremy Mosby takes readers on a superhero's adventure through this compelling and imaginative alternate universe. Get iCoin on Amazon.com today.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Legend of the Traveling Tardis radio show. My name is Christian Basel. I'm here with Charles, Mackenzie, Melanie, and Brian. And again, always help out our sponsors out there, because without them, we don't exist. And we love our sponsors out there, including Famous Faces and Funnies. If you've ever been to the Space Coast and you're looking for a comic book store and everything geek-wise, I think I went over there once. It's like 2 basketball gymnasium. I think it was a gymnasium at one point. I think that's what they did, because you could still see the basketball hoops that are pulled up in there. And that's just this wall-to-wall geek stuff. Rick Shea and the team over there are wonderful, sweet, knowledgeable. They'll help you out. If it exists somewhere in the geekdom, they've got it out there. But let's continue on there. We're going to be talking about Big Finish's The Holy Terror. And the reason why we picked this one, the reason why I've picked this one, because I'm going to let my team critique me on my choice of The Holy Terror. Back in, I think it was in the mid 2000s, I was introduced to Big Finish, and the first audio I got was The Holy Terror. And everybody, there were quite a few people telling me about this particular episode, saying this is a great episode. You got to try it out there. Not only that, but it was the introduction of a companion, of all things, a penguin. He's a shape-shifting penguin by the name of Frobisher. And you probably, if you know people talk about Frobisher, I'm not talking about the one from Torchwood. We're talking about the actual penguin who hangs around with the Sixth Doctor. And I was sitting there when I first saw the CD, and I said, you got to be kidding me. He's got a penguin as a companion. He goes, trust me, you're going to love this. So I listened to The Holy Terror, and it was my gateway drug into the world of Big Finish. I'm going to let this team critique my favorite, my gateway drug audio of all time. It was written by Rob Sherman. If anybody remembers your 2005 reboot, he wrote the episode Dalek. He's written also other episodes of Big Finish, including Scherzo, which is another one of my favorite. And it's one of those Big Finish ones you either extremely love or extremely hate. I don't know of anybody who's in the middle ground. Scherzo is really something different. And the reason why I'm pointing it out is because basically Rob Sherman was told, you have your own universe to write it. If you're given that much power and told, yes, you have a new Big Finish audio, the Doctor and at that time Charlie are sent into a completely different universe. The laws of time do not exist. Everything, causality, everything you know about time, everything that you've taken for granted in the laws of anything do not work in that universe. And it is very much a very, very, very strange audio. But I digress. We're going to head back to The Holy Terror. Now, of course, we're going to start off as we start off every show rating an episode or anything like that. I'm going to start off just at random. Charles, because you're the most knowledgeable of the Big Finish and books, how would you rate between 1 and 10 Traveling Tardises? 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. How would you rate The Holy Terror and why?
I'm going to have to give it a lower rating than you might expect, but I just want to emphasize I like this story. It's a great story. But I'm giving it a 6 only because Big Finish have since then done so much better, and they've taken the Sixth Doctor so much further. But that's the only reason. If you haven't heard any later Big Finish Sixth Doctor, this is a terrific story to start hearing the Sixth Doctor on audio.
So you think that there's more of a stepping stone?
Yeah. When I first heard it, I would have given it an 8. Now I'll give it a 6 because everything that Big Finish does is now so much better than it was then. That was the 14th release. They were babies back then.
Right. Incredible there. Brian, what would you rate the my favorite episode of Big Finish?
I'd give it an 8 because it's a good balance of comedy and suspense and just a wee bit of scares thrown in as well. So, yeah, definitely an 8.
Definitely an 8 there. Mackenzie, how would you rate The Holy Terror?
I also would give it an 8. I am familiar with the Sixth Doctor. In fact, I was actually having a conversation earlier where trying to decide whether the Eighth Doctor or the Sixth Doctor is really my doctor in the audios, because I really like Colin Baker. I have never heard any of his audios that have been bad. But I can agree with where Charles said that Big Finish has gone so much further with it. But just for the episode itself, definitely an 8.
Gotcha. And Melanie?
I'm so glad that Charles went first. I was going to give it a 6. Because I'm so sorry, Christian, but to echo exactly what, as Charles said and others have said, they've done so. If you look at Big Finish and the entirety of its work, including everything now, I think they've just pushed the envelope where they produce such amazing things that in the scope, I'm pushing it further back to a 6, because if this was my first Big Finish, I don't know if I would have stuck to it as much as I have, because I jumped in like with 8 and the War Doctor and 10. So that's kind of like where I started. So I'm having these, I have it on the
benefited from the later production.
Yeah. So I did enjoy it. I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it. I think it's a great intro to the Sixth Doctor. If somebody's never really watched the Sixth Doctor, or if they have and they're more of a new Who than a classic Who, and they need to they want a little bit more. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'll maybe even cut a TARDIS in half and give you 6.5. It's good. It is good. I just don't think it's great. And I'm so sorry, Christian, because I know you keep saying it's your favorite one. I'm so sorry.
No apologies there. Well, let me plead my case. As far as I'm going to give it a 10. It was my first. It is, I think, everything that is wonderful about Doctor Who in all of its attempts. And you guys were mentioning they were stepping stones, and because it was what led on to where we are. What is it now? This was number 14. What were we now? What, like 1400 or something like that?
That's just this month.
Yeah, just this month, exactly. And this was the stepping stone, and it didn't really have, and they took a chance. It didn't really have the build-up behind it. I think for everything that is Doctor Who, as far as comedy, as far as drama, as far as sci-fi, as far as the expansion of the mind, and I keep on thinking, I know this sounds weird, but I keep on thinking, cue that moment of the scene at the end of Star Trek The Next Generation when he's going with Picard. It's not about the space exploration, but the exploration of the mind. And I think this is the best mind that, as far as the story is concerned, because you don't even know where this is going, and the reveal, it's slow. You kind of get to it, but you're kind of like, okay. But it was so wonderful too, because the characterizations and what happens ultimately in the end with all the characters. Rob gave a great impression of the feeling. You got to get attached with him. It doesn't matter. I mean, you felt sorry for Eugene. You felt sorry for Childrick. Even though he was the bad guy, you felt sorry for Lavilia. You felt sorry for Clovis. I mean, you felt sorry for everybody, including the child.
Yeah.
Because the Doctor's already figured it out, but the audience hasn't figured it out yet. And I think when you watch Doctor Who, even today, the structures that have been placed in you one moment you're crying because of tears of joy, and the next moment you're crying tears of pain. And I think this episode encapsulated everything. And I love the way that Rob Sherman introduced the introduction was so Monty Python. Yeah. Was so funny. And you thought you were on, you thought you were on a ride that was kind of like, this was going to be fun. This is going to be, this is going to be a lighthearted episode. But as soon as you go down into the dungeon, everything changes.
Yeah.
And then you realize what happened later on. I think this is the best of Doctor Who. If somebody said, Christian, can you tell me what one episode of Big Finish encapsulates Doctor Who? Capulet, Montague, anything. This is the one. And because it's only been in its infancy, I don't think you could have had the mindset of everything that came after it without episodes like the Holy Terror. The chance they took with a shape-shifting penguin. It's a Sixth Doctor episode, and I'm not downing Colin, but he's not more of the popular doctors these days. The fact that they took Rob Sherman's insanity and made it into a wonderful storytelling thing, that's the case that I plead there. But I'm going to go directly to the people. We only got a few minutes before we get a hard break, but Melanie, you gave it one of the lower scores. What was your challenges with the story that somebody who might be being introduced to Big Finish might have an issue with?
Because that you tagged along that last part in regards to Big Finish, I don't think that for me but my issues with the story, I don't think directly correlate to Big Finish as a whole. I think my issue with the story is maybe the type of storytelling that when Big Finish was producing these particular, like this particular one at this time, they just told the story a little differently. Now their storytelling, I think, has more foreshadowing. I'll stick with my issue. The reason I'm giving such a low. Oh, there's so many different ways I can answer this. I got to go fast. Crap. Okay, so the beginning, it was very I did get that Monty Python part of the humor. I thought it was well timed. I thought it was played off really well. I loved the asides. I was chuckling like an idiot when I was listening to this at work. I really did enjoy that. However, I didn't feel that. Looking at the whole thing from a timeline perspective, I think the crescendo of this, when we hit the conflict, I think it happened a lot later in the story then I think when they got to the dungeon and then everything started hitting the fan, I think it kind of went a little long in the story before that happened.
I could see that.
That for me, I would have moved that a little bit forward. I mean, it's a little bit, I'm going to be very hypercritical on this, but I think there wasn't enough foreshadowing to think that something was bad, because there was a lot of times, like in the beginning, with how much lighthearted, how funny and comical it was. I kept thinking, this is called the Holy Terror. Why am I not getting that? Like, it wasn't something like in the background that is insidious that I haven't that's lurking in, like that it's kind of rearing its head here and there. I wasn't getting that.
Melanie, do you want to hold that? You want to hold that thought after the commercial and then continue? Yep. Okay, folks, stand by. We're going to be right back. We're going to continue on the Holy Terror and. More of the ripping of my favorite episode when we return. Keep on listening and become part of the legend.
You have more options than ever before when choosing a film, a television or internet series, a book to curl up with, or even a radio show or podcast. Get to know the people who are creating for you. The Hangin' With Web Show, hosted by award-winning author and journalist G.W. Pomacher, is the internet's fastest-growing web talk show series. The Hangin' With Web Show features professional, yet casual, in-depth interviews with creative arts and entertainment pros. Meet the people behind a digital revolution in creating more quality content than ever before in the history of media. Find the Hangin' With Web Show on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or simply go to www.hanginwithshow.com. That's www.hanginwithshow.com.
Best-selling and award-winning author of true crime and crime fiction, Yvonne Mason is back with a brand new book, The Pink Canary, a book that delves into the life of a drag queen and a marvelous whodunit. You can find this and all of Yvonne's other works on Amazon.com, or find Yvonne Mason on Facebook and Twitter.
He's gonna kill me.
Buy your copy of Pink Canary now.
Hello, sweeties. I'm Crystal Moore. I play the Doctor in fan series Doctor Who Velocity. You're listening to The Legend of the Traveling Tardis radio show.
It's Germany, 1938. Charlotte is a 15-year-old girl living in the Jewish quarter. George lives in the city proper, and enamored by Charlotte's charm and grace when she wanders into his cobbler shop, George decides right then and there that he is going to marry her. Follow along as this unlikely couple struggles to stay one step ahead of the Gestapo and their dramatic escape from Nazi Germany. Good things always happen in springtime, from author Joanne Fisher on Amazon.com today.
The Rite of Wands by Mackenzie Flohr. One boy, one rite, and a world of deadly secrets that could change history forever. It's time for The Rite of Wands by Mackenzie Flohr. When a horrible fate reveals itself during the Rite of Wands ceremony, Mirta must find a way to change his destiny. Forbidden from revealing the future, he is granted a wand and magical powers in order to save himself and those he loves. But Mirta is not the only one with secrets. The Rite of Wands by Mackenzie Flohr, available on Amazon.com now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Legend of the Traveling Tardis. Mackenzie, besides Amazon, is there a place where they can find other works, or where's your web presence that people could follow you online? And I better throw that in there. People can follow you online and check out other things that you've done and other things that you're going to be coming up with.
Yeah, besides Amazon, I'm pretty much found at all the major retailers. Probably the main one would be Amazon and then Barnes & Noble. But I should be having an announcement coming up very soon about The Rite of Apparition, which is the second book in this series.
Okay. Well, everybody, if you get a chance.
Also, we should always refer to her as gold medal winning Mackenzie Flohr.
Yeah!
Talking foreshadowing here. So, yes, everybody, if you get a chance, check out Mackenzie Flohr's book, The Rite of Wands. Check it out on Amazon. Purchase it. And then if you do purchase it, please tell them The Legend of the Traveling Tardis had sent you. Now, we're back to the ripping of my favorite episode, and Melanie is going to get to
the roast.
You know what? I don't even consider this a roast. I mean, because everybody's going to have different opinions about things, what they don't like. And like you said, we were at 14
it's
billion.
Just that they're all wrong, except you.
Exactly, but you're wrong. Exactly. So, Melanie, please continue what you thought about.
I'll just wrap it up I thought the characters were great. I thought that I love the idea of Frobisher. I was all in with that. Colin Baker was great. I thought the acting was great. My issue with this particular story is that I think the plot could, just like any really long movie, certain parts could have been edited down and other parts might have been able to be expanded. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so you wanted more? Is that what I'm getting?
I wanted less of the comedy part in the beginning, and a little bit more of the terror. I found that it wasn't well balanced.
We're short on terror.
Yes, I wanted more terror for the holy terror.
Brian, there was an old movie that reminds me of this story, and I think there are other movies out there, but for whatever reason, this particular movie, and it's actually one of my favorite guilty pleasures. I don't know if anybody remembers Judd Nelson from The Hip.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah,
okay.
With John Hurt. Yeah,
with John Hurt and a bunch of MASH people from the series MASH. They were like supporting roles from MASH were actually people in the supporting roles. But that's how that started. It started off as a comedy, and then right in the middle, you weren't exactly sure where this was going, and then it ended up in a tragedy. And that's why I kind of like this story, because it does kind of I think some people want the balance of comedy and then the tragedy, and then every once in a while the comedy does kick back in. But for me, I don't think that would have worked if you threw in a couple of jokes here and then, because I get to see, I understand what Melanie's saying. It kind of lulled out in the middle, but I think that was more character development. That was more of Rob trying to throw in more character stuff. So when they met their, spoilers, demise, you felt that pain more than if it wasn't the build up. But Brian, I digress. Go ahead and take it away.
Oh, I love Colin Baker in general on Big Finish. It's just he got such better dialogue, a lot better scripts in general on Big Finish. And to me, this is one of them. I love the fact that, as we said, it starts off very lighthearted, very like Monty Python type of rhythm. And then next thing you know, you're going down this tunnel right into the pit of despair. It's just, and by the time it gets done, you've learned a valuable lesson. As they were kind of picking up with Frobisher in the beginning, but remember when he was creating these fish or whatever to hunt down, and he goes, well, the fish may be, not real, but the fish still is experiencing that. And this is something you learn about the characters that have been created in this, lack of a better word, some kind of prison. Mm-hmm. And you actually genuinely feel for these people, even though you find out in the end they're just a fiction created by this person, who's trapped there. And that's what's so brilliant about the story for me, is the fact that it turns from one thing into another, but at the same time it teaches you a lesson along the way.
Charles, one of the hard, I think, lessons. I'm thinking I'm taking my cue from Brian over there. One of the hard lessons I think for this episode was it did delve into almost like a religious extremism, but it actually gave that a persona when they were going through and talking about tradition. This is the way things are. This is how we live. Mm-hmm. I really love the scope of that. It didn't Bible thump. It didn't bash the Bible. It actually just said, listen, here's another take on this. What do you think? And it didn't make anybody a good guy or bad guy on that. Sure.
Yeah, we should make it clear that this story isn't about the Bible that you and I know.
Right.
This is a whole other civilization with a whole other set of religion, but its ritual for the sake of ritual becomes meaningless tradition. And so there's a lot of commentary along that.
Right.
And I think Catholic choir boys in particular are going to say, hey, a lot on this. Again, I really enjoyed the story. The cast are fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not, it's not required, but it is worth having read some of Frobisher's appearances in the comics, so you get a better feel for him. Otherwise, Robert Jesek's voice for Frobisher might seem a little grating, because it's so out of whack with the rest of the cast, him sounding like he's coming from the Bronx, even though he's a Whifferdale penguin.
Yeah, exactly.
Well directed by Nicholas Pegg, I thought. And
yes,
in particular, I really loved Berengaria, I think is how you pronounce her name, Roberta Taylor. She was, I thought for sure that was, I'm sorry, what's her name? Never mind.
Berengaria, I believe that's
Berengaria. No, I thought she was wonderfully arch, wonderfully camp. Mm-hmm. A very camp character. And in particular, of course, Sam Kelly is Eugene, who has a very important role in the story, as it turns out. I disagree, though, that there wasn't a lot of foreshadowing. There was a lot of foreshadowing in this thing. Mm-hmm. I hadn't listened to the story before yesterday for quite a while. And I was like, oh, man, this was much more laid out than I realized. Right. The first time I read it, listened to it, of course, I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, what? Really? Now, this time I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. And there's a scene that actually, there's a scene where the Doctor and Eugene are talking, and they just lay it out.
Yeah.
All the handwriting questions and how that the book is exactly the right length to record the history and all that. They just lay it out. You're like, oh my God, this is much more obvious than I remembered. One of my criticisms, I guess, and I'm having to struggle to find them, is because this is a really good story, is that Colin doesn't really have anywhere near as much to do. This is Frobisher's story, and the rest of the cast may take maximum advantage of it. And Colin is really sort of a background character almost, which is a shame. It's Frobisher that drives the action, really. So,
but don't you think like that represents more of Doctor Who? And it's not to say that it's not Dr. Prime, but when we first see, like in Classic Who, for the first 10 minutes, we're seeing story develop. We're getting to know characters and stuff before the Doctor even steps out of the TARDIS, so that we get the world around what the Doctor's about to enter.
Oh yeah, they definitely wrote this for people who had no idea who Frobisher was. And the cover does a great job of summarizing the story, I thought. And, it's not necessary to have a background on him, but you are a little bit still dropped into the, what is going on? The TARDIS on strike? What is this? So again, I'm having to struggle to find problems with it, but I will mention that one of my favorite little bits, because I know Rob Shearman quite well, and I'd forgotten that he's in this as well as having written it.
He's the sculptor,
He has a tiny little part as the sculptor. Yeah, it was very nice. So does Jackie Rayner, who was the exec producer. But anyway, it's a fun, funny story that goes dark most of the way through, and if you're familiar with any of Rob Shearman's writings, you knew that was coming.
Yeah.
So
Dalek does not even represent how dark he can go with his dark humor.
There is still room for comedy throughout almost till the very, very end. And I just, it's a great story. There's nothing really wrong with it per se. You have to sort of nitpick to find anything. It is still a good way to introduce yourself to the Big Finish Line, especially because it's an early adventure, and so it's all going to get a lot more complex and elaborate and beautifully produced from here.
Mackenzie, the subject matter of this particular episode, I don't even think they would have even thought of putting on the big screen, on the small screen. I think this is just way too much, especially to dub it a children's television show with what takes place, especially right at the end of everything. Do you think this is something that might today hit? Maybe it's worth it, or this is something that, here's a Doctor Who, but here's a disclaimer. It's a Torchwood disclaimer, something a little bit out. We're coming up to a break, so we got a couple minutes. What do you think about the subject matter, and would it make it to TV?
I could definitely say in Colin Baker's time that it would not have, not only because they wouldn't have the resources, but because his Doctor was very dark. And it didn't seem like this was really dark for his Doctor, per se. Today, if they did like a redone version, I could see it, because this it reminded me a little bit of like Scratchman in the way where it had that other multi-universe. But the thing that really bothered me the most was actually the child, because the child was supposed to be 5 years old, and I just felt like the child was way too intelligent for being a 5-year-old. So I struggled with that.
Yeah, well, I think it's because it was an intelligent child, but the child was kind of growing up fast too. All of a sudden, we don't have an explanation. Here's the child.
Well, he's a god.
Exactly. So wouldn't he come up with a little bit? But we understand why he's a god in this particular Who-niverse.
And that's the one thing that bugged me about this story. And it bugged me the first time, and it bugged me this time, was just putting a child away in a cupboard for 5 years. I believe that turns you into a wizard, not a god. So
yeah.
Hopefully
there's no explanation for that.
Some diaper change, you get a little rash. So speaking of rash, and I don't know where I'm going with that one, we have a rash thing of commercials to go to. So anyway, stay tuned, folks. We're getting into our next segment. I've got some questions for our panelists when we continue to become part of the legend.
Not every phoenix is reborn from the ashes. When dark fairies turn their powers loose in Atlanta, a young water phoenix must overcome her own mistakes to save mankind from wishing itself to Armageddon. Begin Michael J. Allen's epic 5-book series with Ashes of Raging Water, available for a limited time exclusively as a part of the Cursed Lands 20-novel box set, coming May 7th on Amazon, Nook, or Apple Book. Pre-order now for $1 and get 12 free stories as the author's gift to you. Learn more at cursledlandsboxset.com.
Now on Amazon.com. War Calls, Love Cries, a Civil War novel by Mark Berry. Isaac Wells is an innocent farm boy living in upstate New York. His dreams are shattered by a treacherous brother and the onset of a devastating civil war. War Calls and Love Cries is a fast-moving historical narrative. It is an emotional roller coaster ride and a riveting must-read book that you will think about and talk about for a long time to come. War Calls, Love Cries is the kind of book you will cherish for a lifetime. On Amazon.com today.
Hello, I'm Nick Briggs, executive producer of Big Finish Productions and voice of the Daleks and lots of other Doctor Who monsters, and you're listening to the Legend of the Traveling Tardis radio show. Oh yes.
Who's who? What's hot and what's not? 2019 saw some amazing new creative talents, and now you can peek behind the scenes at the hottest indie creative artists in this year's edition of 25 Hottest Indie Authors, Artist Advocates 2019 magazine. Published by the renowned And I Thought Ladies, this is a one-of-a-kind look into the brightest rising stars in the creative universe. Get yours today at magcloud.com and at andwethought.com.
This is Cosplay Michael with the Hanging Out Club Show. I want to tell you about my friends at Embellish Effects in Orlando, Florida. They've got makeup, costumes, and props for all of your costume needs. And the team at Embellish Effects is helpful and friendly. Embellish Effects is one of my favorite places, and I know it will be yours too. I'll see you there. Or go to embellisheffects.com. And remember, cosplay is for everyone.
That's right, Cosplay Michael. Cosplay is for everybody. You guys need to check. If you're in the Orlando area, if you're in Florida, check out, or anywhere, you go over and check out Embellish FX. They're located in downtown Orlando. Tell them the Legend of the Traveling Tardis sent you. If you're in cosplay, and we're going to make an announcement about a convention that we're going to be going to next weekend, that we're going to be hosting panels, and we definitely, if you are a cosplayer and looking for some stuff to help put your cosplay together, they've got it down there at Embellish FX. Definitely want to check them out and tell them the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS sent you. Now, Brian, we're back to talking about we're doing the review of one of my favorite Big Finish, if not the favorite Big Finish audios, is The Holy Terror, starring Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor and the companion Frobisher. And speaking of which, Brian, what did you think of Frobisher as a companion? A shape-shifting penguin.
I don't know about you, but when I hear the voice and the attitude and the character, I think of Yaphet. Yaphet from
really?
I don't know why, but this is me.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I think he's just, you have to get past the fact, he's a penguin. But at the same time, it's nice every now and then to have, a companion who's not just your typical average human. And he's got a sense of humor. He's got his own way of doing things. He's a bit gruff and all that, but at the same time, he foils well with the Sixth Doctor, who's trying to, put up with him in a way.
Yeah.
Come on, he's one of the few companions who's managed to tick off the TARDIS to the point it went on strike, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
So you gotta love him. He has his own, little charm about him.
Well, I'm gonna kick that question to anybody who wants to take it. I meant Frobisher. Here's the first time I think we, aside from Chameleon, that the character could change their appearance, and the appearance they picked is a penguin of all things, and he's got that what is it? I want to get it right, like a Bronx, New York accent. Like he's in the noir. Did I pronounce that right?
Well, he's a detective by trade, yes.
By trade. But he's got that, especially if you want to check out another episode, which is kind of not fair. If you can find it, it's called The Maltese Penguin. But Colin plays Frobisher, and I cannot get over that accent to save my life. I'm sorry. It was going through mud listening to Colin try to do an accent that he just couldn't do, because Frobisher's pretending to be him during that whole episode. So it was kind of a weird thing. But I digress. Did anybody also want to take on Frobisher as a companion? What did you think of him?
I kept trying to envision a penguin and knowing that he's like, a king penguin, the king version, right? The king penguin.
Yeah.
Him trying to go down, was it 2 miles worth of stairs into the dungeon?
Yeah.
And just thinking for if you're a shape-shifting anything, penguin is not exactly the most mobile shape. So for me, I had to suspend the disbelief a little bit. And I'm like, still, I loved all his dialogue. I liked his point of view. I loved his comments. I liked how frank he was. When someone did something stupid, he would just have that aside of going, really? That's okay. I really liked the character, but I just kept thinking the mobility of it going, how are you getting down these stairs?
It's not only that, he's a shapeshifter. I mean, he could have just shapeshifted into anything to hide when he was trying to get away from people. He stayed in his penguin form. And not only that, I thought it would have been funny. It's just like if he shapeshifted into something that he was right next to, and then somebody caught him because, oh yeah, there's 2 bowls here. There was only supposed to be 1. You know, what's with the second bowl? You know, something like that I thought would have been something cute that would have happened.
They gave him some terrific lines, I have to say. There's one where somebody comes into the room and he goes, "Hey, I'm in the bath. I'm all naked here." And he goes, "Wait, you're a penguin. You look like that all the time." He says, No, I shapeshift myself a pair of black and white pants.
Yes, exactly.
Has no practical effect.
Gotcha.
The only time, his shapeshifting ability is entirely dependent on whether the writer needs a deus ex machina. But they do actually have him do a little bit of shapeshifting in the story when the sculptor, Rob Sherman, gets the nose wrong. He shapeshifts his nose to match the statue because he's so pleased with the rest of the statue. So I thought that was kind of funny. But his shapeshifting ability is not great.
Yeah, because they wanted to execute the sculptor, or I believe, because it wasn't correct. He's like, no, see, look, and he changes the beak. No, see, it's fine. I thought that spoke to Frobisher's character of no, see, you don't have to go to the execute route. Everything's good.
Yeah. The other line that I really loved from him was, "Hey, remind me next week we need to talk about free will." And
that's right.
Because he told it. It's sort of like a Life of Brian moment. He told all the people that he was temporarily in charge of to be independent, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to go hold a vote. What candidate would you like us to vote for, sir?" And so.
Well, I've got a question for everybody, and we're getting to the final portion of our show, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to answer the question there. One of the things that I kind of liked about this was that, and going back to my take on this, it's kind of like Life of Brian, the Holy Grail. It did question, it let you question it, but if you were somebody who believed in it, it didn't insult you. It was taking comedy and just saying, "Hey, listen, you know what? Why don't, let's just have fun with it." And I didn't, and then the very end, when the lesson comes out, that's what I appreciate this, about this story. And I think, being it's the 14th episode of the Big Finish series, I think I'm glad because I think this was an episode that gave the power for all these other episodes to take a chance and do something special and become it, because everybody's been saying, "Oh yeah, there've been better episodes," but if it wasn't for episodes like the Holy Terror, I don't think you would have all these other episodes that have taken chances like this one did there. But I digress, and we only got a few minutes, so I'm going to give everybody a shot at this. I'm going to start with you, Charles. What was your gateway drug into Big Finish? What was the episode? And give a minute synopsis of what you
Well, because I am ancient, I actually started listening to Doctor Who audio dramas before Big Finish was around. Some of the same people that formed Big Finish, Gary Russell in particular, also did fan audios that they circulated around in the then nascent internets. And so there was a story that became Spare Parts, and then Big Finish remade it as Spare Parts. And that was kind of my gateway drug to it, because it really explored what the Cybermen were and could be. And Mark Platt, I think, was the guy who wrote it. And it's really horrific and intriguing and fascinating. And so that was when I knew that audio for Doctor Who would really work. But Charles, the fan audio version was much more crude.
Charles, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to. We only got a minute left. Brian, what was your gateway drug into Big Finish?
Sirens of Time, all the way back at the beginning.
The very first one, yeah. That one's a really, really good one there. And it has Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, if you want a good 3-Doctor episode there. Melanie, what was your gateway drug?
Oh, God, I can't remember the title off the top of my head right now, but it was an 8th Doctor one, and it happened because I went to a MegaCon fan days in Orlando. I saw some guy hosting a panel with the 8th Doctor himself, Paul McGann, and they were going on and on about Big Finish. And I can't remember what the guy's name was. I think it was Christian Basel, maybe. And that hooked me. He read... Paul McGann had read the War Doctor, the the war speech that Capaldi did. He did a cold reading of that. I was blown away, and I went, okay, well, I got to listen to this guy, and I can't remember which one it was, but I downloaded 3 of them.
I was your gateway drug into Big
You were the
Finish.
one that did that. Sorry that I hate.
Again, it's so dreamy.
Yes.
Fun fact.
Mackenzie, real fast, what was your gateway drug into Big Finish?
Mine was the light at the end.
We're talking about 50th anniversary
Latecomer
Big Finish episode. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, folks, if you ever get a chance, go to bigfinish.com and tell them the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS sent you. There's stuff out there. They're always having sales. This is great stuff there. And unfortunately,
episodes are available on Spotify and Apple Music as well.
Exactly. And just to let you folks know, our convention news, we are going to be at MegaCon next weekend, all weekend, from Thursday the 16th to the 19th, and we have a special panel going on at 3 p.m. in room N220G. Also, we were talking about Mackenzie Flohr's Rite of Wands. The Hanging with Web team booth will have her book out there if you want to get it for purchase. So check it out over there. That's all the time we have, folks. Thank you for always being a part of the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS, always becoming part of the legend. We're going to ride out now with a song, and it's going to be the Aliens Rock. Is that who it is? I think that's what we got. Yeah, it's the song Terrified by the Brothers of Alien Rock. Check out the Hanging with Web show, Indie Music Spotlight, every week, live. They've got great music on there. Folks, again, we'll see you at MegaCon next week. Be safe, have fun, and always become part of the legend.
It's embarrassing. I'm all naked here.